Massive stones stand in silent circles, built by minds we can no longer name. We are surrounded by the ghosts of prehistoric engineers, the silent architects who shaped our world with nothing but stone, earth, and breathtaking ingenuity. By the end of this journey, you will understand the hidden intelligence behind these ancient marvels and see human history in a completely new light. How did they move stones heavier than elephants across vast distances? And why align entire temples with the stars? The answers lie in a forgotten world of communal effort and cosmic belief. What does our own drive to build reveal about who we are? These stones did not rise in isolation. Across Europe, thousands of years ago, a new idea was taking hold in the human mind: the ambition to build on a colossal scale. In a world without metal tools or written plans, communities from the coast of Portugal to the shores of the Black Sea began to shape the landscape itself. They were entering the era of megalithic construction, a time defined by immense stone monuments. The scale of their ambition is almost beyond our comprehension. Consider the single-standing stones, the menhirs of Carnac in France. Nearly 3,000 of them stand in silent, parallel rows, some towering over 20 feet high. Each one was quarried, shaped, and erected by human hands alone. How was such a thing even possible? Archaeologists like Colin Renfrew point not first to tools but to society. These projects required a sophisticated level of social organization, a community that could feed and coordinate dozens, perhaps hundreds of workers for months or even years. It was a form of social engineering that preceded the stone. The process began with a profound understanding of the material. These early architects knew how to read the landscape, identifying natural fissures in bedrock. They would heat the stone with fire and then rapidly cool it with water, causing it to crack along predictable lines. Using stone mauls and antler picks, they would then painstakingly work the block free. Then came the most daunting task: transport. A stone weighing several tons had to be moved, sometimes for miles. The evidence suggests they used a combination of log rollers, sledges, and earthen ramps. It was a slow, grueling ballet of leverage and coordinated muscle, a testament to sheer determination. But why? Why invest such a staggering amount of collective energy? The answer is woven from many threads. For some, it was a profound spiritual act, a way to connect with ancestral spirits or cosmic forces by building permanent structures for the dead, like the dolmens that form stone-chambered tombs. For others, it was a powerful way to mark territory, to declare to all who passed, "Our people are here." And for the community itself, the very act of building may have been the most important product. Heaving together on a rope that moved a giant stone forged a powerful shared identity, turning a collection of families into a unified people. This dawn of megalithic construction was not merely about moving rock. It was the moment we began to build our world, and in doing so began to build ourselves. That intuitive grasp of physics, that ability to see force and balance in the world around them, was their true engineering manual. They understood that a long, sturdy wooden lever placed under the edge of a multi-ton slab could transform their collective effort. With a team heaving down on one end, the other would rise, lifting a weight that their bare hands could never hope to move. This was the principle of leverage in its most primal form, but lifting was only half the battle. The real challenge was control, preventing the massive stone from crashing back down or tipping dangerously. This is where their ingenuity with counterweights truly shines. They would build earthen mounds or pile heavy stones onto the opposite end of their lever or a makeshift platform, creating a stable, balanced system. It was a slow, meticulous dance of lift, support, and adjust. They would raise the stone a few inches, slide wooden blocks or smaller rocks underneath to hold it, then reset the lever to gain another few inches. This incremental process, repeated over and over, could eventually stand a monolith upright. To move these stones horizontally, they turned to another simple yet brilliant innovation, the rolling log. Placing a series of logs beneath a stone sledge created a temporary, movable road that drastically reduced friction. A team pulling on ropes could then drag a load that would have been immovable across bare ground. Think of it like this: trying to push a heavy box across a rough carpet is incredibly difficult, but place that same box on a cart with wheels, and the task becomes manageable. For these builders, the logs were their wheels. The later construction of Egyptian obelisks, though a more advanced civilization, perfectly illustrates these universal principles. To raise a 100-ton stone needle, they would have built a giant ramp of sand and rubble around the base. The obelisk was then slowly pulled up the incline, its base sliding into a prepared foundation pit, while the counterweight of the ramp itself kept the entire operation stable. How did prehistoric minds, without formal mathematics, calculate these balances? They learned by watching a branch spring back after being bent, by feeling the shift in weight as they carried a heavy log between two people. Theirs was a knowledge written not in equations, but in the body, a deep, intuitive understanding of the physical world born from a lifetime of direct interaction with it. This practical intelligence, so easily overlooked, was the silent force behind the stones, and this hard-won knowledge did not vanish with the builders. It was encoded directly into the bones of the structures they left behind. Their understanding of stone and earth was matched only by their mastery of the sky. Long before the invention of the telescope, the silent architects were mapping the heavens onto the land. They observed the slow, grand dance of celestial bodies, noting how the sun's rising point shifted along the horizon with the seasons, and they used this knowledge to anchor their greatest creations to the cosmos. A shaman or elder, watching the stars night after night, would have directed the placement of a temple's entrance to capture the solstice sunrise with breathtaking precision. This practice, which we now call archaeoastronomy, reveals them not just as builders but as the first astronomers. Take Newgrange in Ireland, a massive 5,000-year-old tomb that looks like a great grass-covered hill. Above its entrance is a narrow opening, a roof box that seems almost too small to be significant. But for a few precious minutes around the winter solstice, as the sun climbs just above the horizon, a narrow beam of sunlight pierces through this opening. It travels down a long, dark passageway, illuminating the central chamber deep within the mound for a brief, dramatic moment. This was no accident. It was a meticulously engineered event, a way to connect the world of the living with the realm of the ancestors at the year's darkest point, bringing the promise of light and renewal. At Stonehenge, the alignments are even more complex. Researcher Gerald Hawkins proposed that the monument functioned as a sophisticated astronomical calendar. On the summer solstice, the sun rises directly over the heel stone, perfectly framed within the circle's central archway, but it was not only the sun they tracked. Certain stones also align with the most extreme rising and setting points of the moon over its 18.6-year cycle. They used simple yet profoundly effective methods to achieve this accuracy. A series of wooden posts could be used to mark the horizon positions of stars over many years. They understood how to use shadows cast by a single, tall stone to track the sun's progression. Sometimes they even incorporated natural features, building their monuments in relation to a distant hill or a lone mountain peak that served as a permanent foresight for celestial events. Even the vast geoglyphs of the Nazca lines in Peru, those enormous drawings etched into the desert floor, may have held celestial correlations, with some lines pointing directly toward the sun's position on the solstices. Why was this connection between Earth and sky so utterly crucial for them? It provided a cosmic order. In a world governed by the seasons, knowing when to plant and when to harvest was a matter of survival. These stone calendars gave them that power, but it went far deeper than agriculture. It was about weaving human life into the fabric of the universe. Their spiritual practices, their rituals, their very sense of time were all guided by the celestial clock. This was a holistic world view where the earthly and the cosmic were inseparable. And this profound connection to the cosmos was not confined to a single culture, as we find its echoes in the most unexpected places across the globe. From the high Andes to the Mesopotamian plains, the same principles of engineering emerged from entirely separate minds. It is a story of parallel invention, a global chorus of human ingenuity answering similar challenges with eerily similar solutions. Consider the walls of Great Zimbabwe in southern Africa, a city built between the 11th and 15th centuries. Its great enclosure features walls rising over 30 feet high, constructed entirely from precisely shaped granite blocks. The builders used a technique called dry stone walling, fitting each stone so perfectly that no mortar was needed for stability, a method that echoes across the world at places like Machu Picchu in Peru. There, Inca engineers masterfully cut and fitted immense granite blocks, with the stones locking together so tightly that a knife blade cannot be inserted between them. This shared understanding of load distribution and interlocking shapes created structures that have withstood earthquakes for centuries. Why would cultures separated by vast oceans arrive at the same architectural idea? Experts like Jared Diamond suggest that the environment itself was the great teacher. The challenges of a landscape, whether steep mountains or arid plains, pushed human creativity toward the most logical and resilient solutions. In Mesopotamia, where stone was scarce, they turned to the earth beneath their feet, fashioning mud into durable adobe bricks to build their towering ziggurats. On the remote island of Rapa Nui, the Moai statues were carved from compressed volcanic ash, a relatively soft rock that was locally abundant and could be worked with stone tools. The material dictated the method. This global perspective reveals something profound about our species. Faced with the need to build something lasting, the human mind, regardless of location, seems to gravitate toward certain truths. A corbelled arch, where each successive layer of stone projects slightly inward until the opening is bridged, appears in the tombs of Mycenaean Greece and in the underground chambers of the Maya. It is the simplest, most stable way to create a roof without a keystone. What do these shared blueprints tell us? They point to a universal human toolkit for problem solving, one built on observation, trial and error, and a deep-seated drive to collaborate. The stones of Great Zimbabwe and the bricks of Mesopotamia are not just isolated wonders, they are different verses of the same ancient song. This chorus of global innovation was only possible because of the societies that orchestrated it, the complex human networks that turned brilliant ideas into enduring stone. The true foundation of these monuments was not stone, but society itself. Envision a workforce numbering in the hundreds, arriving not under the whip of a slave driver, but drawn by a shared purpose, gathering for a seasonal festival of collective effort. This was not a grim labor camp, but a profound social event, fueled by communal feasts and a unifying belief system. The coordination required to quarry, transport, and erect a multi-ton megalith points to a sophisticated social architecture that preceded the physical one. Anthropologists like Timothy Earle point to the emergence of chiefdoms, where a leader could mobilize labor for grand projects, gaining prestige and solidifying control. But evidence also suggests more egalitarian cooperation, where the act of building itself forged the social hierarchy. How were such vast projects managed? Tasks were meticulously divided. Specialized roles emerged from the skilled individuals who could read the bedrock and identify natural fissures, to the teams that mastered the art of levering and counterweights, to the final crews who precisely fitted the stones. We see this at its most astonishing at Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, where complex stone structures were assembled by hunter-gatherers thousands of years before the invention of agriculture or permanent settlement. This was a ritual center that drew scattered bands from across the region, a project so compelling it may have been the catalyst for settling down. Similar principles are seen in the potlatch ceremonies of the Pacific Northwest tribes, where communities would compete through grand feasts and the erection of monumental totem poles. These events were not about economics in a modern sense. They were about social capital, reinforcing bonds and establishing status through generosity and shared accomplishment. So what motivated a person to spend weeks hauling a stone they would never own? The answer lies in the power of collective identity, a shared mythology, perhaps about ancestral spirits residing in the stones, provided a divine purpose. Friendly competition between clans to see who could contribute the most labor or raise the finest stone could drive effort. But most fundamentally, the act of heaving together on a massive rope, of sharing in the struggle and the ultimate triumph, transformed a collection of individuals into a unified people. The monument was not just the product of their labor, it was the physical proof of their community. This social dimension reveals that prehistoric engineering was as much about building society as it was about building with stone. And this collective effort required a shared mental framework, a sophisticated cognitive ability to plan, visualize, and execute projects that would outlive every single person present. The true blueprint for these immense structures existed not on parchment, but within the mind. An ancient master builder could hold a complete, three-dimensional vision of a temple or tomb, guiding its construction from start to finish without a single written plan. This required a form of spatial genius we can scarcely appreciate today, a profound ability to think in volumes, angles, and relationships. Cognitive archaeologists like Stephen Mithen propose that these individuals possessed a highly developed fluid intelligence, a mental agility that allowed them to solve complex engineering problems in real time, adapting to shifting soil or an irregular stone block on the fly. How did they translate this mental model into a shared reality for the entire work crew? They almost certainly used scaled models, perhaps carved from wood or shaped from clay, to convey the overall design. They might have sketched diagrams in the sand, creating temporary, large-scale drawings that everyone could gather around and understand. The elaborate oral traditions of many cultures show us that human memory, when trained and supported by story and song, is capable of preserving vast amounts of intricate information for generations. We can see the results of this meticulous mental planning etched in stone. Look at the Mnajdra temple complex in Malta, where the lower temple's entrance perfectly frames the rising sun on the equinoxes, with the sunlight slicing into the deepest chamber. This was not a happy accident. It was the product of advanced foresight and precise spatial calculation, planned and executed centuries before the pyramids were built. Across Africa, the Senegambian stone circles demonstrate a sophisticated grasp of geometry and symmetry, with hundreds of laterite pillars arranged in perfect circles, each one carefully spaced. To manage such complexity, these architects likely relied on cognitive techniques we still use today. They would break down or chunk the monumental project into a series of smaller, manageable tasks like quarrying, then transport, then foundation digging. They may have used mnemonic devices, associating parts of the structure with stories or characters from their mythology, turning the building process itself into a kind of physical story to be remembered and followed. This mental prowess completely shatters the outdated idea of the primitive cave dweller. Their minds were as sophisticated and capable as our own, simply applied to a different set of challenges and expressed in a different medium. The stones they left behind are more than monuments. They are the fossilized thoughts of brilliant minds, a cognitive legacy written in granite and limestone. And within that legacy, we find that the lines and shapes they chose were never merely functional. They were saturated with a deeper, symbolic meaning that connected the earthly to the eternal. A carved spiral on a megalith was never just a decoration. It could be a map of the afterlife, a depiction of the sun's journey, or a symbol of eternal rebirth. These silent architects embedded their deepest beliefs directly into the stone, transforming brute engineering into a sacred language. Scholars like Marija Gimbutas saw in these recurring motifs the outlines of a widespread Neolithic worldview, one deeply connected to cycles of fertility, death, and regeneration. Across continents, we find a shared vocabulary of shapes. Concentric circles, perhaps representing portals to other realms, appear on the great stones of Newgrange. Zigzag patterns, echoing flowing water or serpentine energy, are carved into the temples of Malta. Powerful animal figures, from the great aurochs of European caves to the mountain lions of southwestern rock art, were likely clan totems or spiritual guardians. But the symbolism went far beyond surface carvings. The structures themselves were profound symbols. The great earthen mounds, like the one covering Newgrange, were likely seen as the womb of the Earth Mother, a place where the dead could return for rebirth. The towering menhirs, those single-standing stones, may have acted as axes mundi, sacred world pillars connecting the earth below with the heavens above. Consider the mysterious tallas of Menorca, massive T-shaped stone formations enclosed within sanctuaries. Their exact purpose remains debated, but their imposing form suggests they served as ritual altars or frames for celestial observation, their very shape charged with a meaning we can only glimpse. Why pour so much effort into embedding this hidden layer of meaning? It was a way to sanctify the landscape, to transform a mere physical space into a spiritual one. Every time a community gathered at a temple aligned with the solstice sun, or processed around a burial mound shaped like the Earth Mother, they were not just performing a ritual. They were physically walking through their cosmology, reinforcing their shared values and their place in the universe with every step. The stone was not just built upon, it was breathed into with belief. This symbolic layer reveals that their ultimate goal was not merely to create a building, but to construct a meaning that would outlast them. And to ensure their creations did last, these architects had to become masters of their environment, reading the land itself with the same intuitive skill they applied to the stars. These builders did not fight the land, they listened to it. A village was not simply placed upon the earth, it was woven into the very fabric of the landscape, a testament to a deep and practical environmental wisdom. In the American Southwest, the ancestral Pueblones, often called the Anasazi, constructed entire cities within the high cliffs of places like Mesa Verde. This was not a random choice. The massive sandstone overhangs provided a natural roof, shielding them from summer sun and winter snow. The orientation of their dwellings was a masterclass in passive solar heating, with south-facing openings designed to capture the low winter sun for warmth, while the deep recesses of the cliff kept them cool during the scorching summer months. They were living in a naturally regulated environment, engineered with stunning foresight. This principle of adaptation was universal. On the windswept Orkney Islands off the coast of Scotland, the Neolithic village of Skara was preserved for millennia under a blanket of sand. Its builders, facing a harsh, treeless environment, showed incredible resourcefulness. They constructed their homes and even their furniture from the most abundant material available, local stone slabs. But their most ingenious innovation was using midden, the compacted waste of their daily lives, including shells, bone, and organic refuse, to insulate the walls of their dwellings. This material formed a thick, dense barrier against the relentless North Atlantic winds, turning their stone houses into cozy, weatherproof shelters. How did they develop such a perfect harmony with their surroundings? It was a knowledge built over generations, a legacy of careful observation passed from elder to child. They learned which types of stone were most durable against driving rain, and how to orient a settlement's entrance to avoid the prevailing winds. When the climate shifted, as it did throughout prehistory, these communities adapted their engineering. In flood-prone regions, they built their homes on raised platforms or mounds, a practice seen from the wetlands of Neolithic Cyprus to the stilt houses of prehistoric Switzerland. In Cyprus, they dug sophisticated wells lined with stone, ensuring a reliable water supply even during dry periods. This was not a struggle for domination over nature, but a continuous, intelligent dialogue with it. Their greatest resource was not the stone itself, but the accumulated knowledge of how to live well within a specific place. This prehistoric environmental intelligence offers a powerful lesson for our own age, showing that true sustainability is not a new invention, but a rediscovery of an ancient principle. The silent architects understood that to build something that lasts, you must first understand the language of the land. Their hands were the first laboratories, testing the very bones of the earth. A prehistoric builder would have learned through endless trial and error which stones rang true when struck, and which shattered uselessly. They developed a practical material science, an intimate knowledge of rock that allowed them to choose the perfect tool or building block for the task. Lithic analysis, the study of ancient stone tools, shows they were not just picking up random rocks. They understood fracture mechanics, seeking out fine-grained materials like flint and obsidian that broke with a razor-sharp edge, perfect for knives and arrowheads. For massive construction, they needed something different, a stone like granite or sandstone that could bear immense weight. The process began at the quarry, where they read the landscape like an open book. They would identify natural fissures in the bedrock, then use fire to their advantage. By building a hot fire against the stone face and then dousing it with water, they induced thermal shock, causing the rock to crack along a predictable line. Using heavy stone mauls, they would then pound along this weakness, eventually working a massive block free. This was not brute force, it was applied physics. But their innovation did not stop with stone. In the Near East, they discovered that by burning limestone in a kiln, they could create quicklime. When mixed with water, this powder underwent a chemical transformation, hardening into a durable plaster. This was the invention of lime mortar, a material that would revolutionize construction by allowing smoother walls and more resilient structures. In Mesopotamia, where stone was rare, they used what they had, combining mud bricks with a natural tar called bitumen, a waterproof mortar that held their ziggurates together against the elements. Half a world away, in ancient China, artisans in jade workshops demonstrated a different kind of mastery. Jade is an incredibly tough stone, resistant to fracturing. To carve it into intricate ritual objects, they could not simply strike it. they developed a laborious process of sawing with abrasive sands and drilling with solid bamboo, a testament to patience and specialized knowledge. What drove this global surge in material innovation? The immediate needs of survival were a powerful engine, the necessity for better tools, secure shelters, and containers for storing food. But there was also a drive for artistic expression, for creating objects of beauty and spiritual power that transcended mere utility. This accumulated, hands-on knowledge, passed down through generations, formed the very bedrock of all later technology. The silent architects were not just builders, they were the first material scientists, and their legacy is written in the very styles of the structures they conceived. The first shelters were simple extensions of the natural world. A few branches leaned against a rock face or a hollow in the earth. But over millennia, this basic impulse to find cover blossomed into something far more ambitious, a deliberate act of world building. We can trace a remarkable evolution from those temporary lean toss to the sophisticated, multi-room structures that housed entire communities. This was not a sudden revolution, but a slow, cumulative process of refinement, where each generation built upon the knowledge of the last. Experts like John Pfeiffer mapped this journey from the nomadic lifestyles of the Paleolithic, centered around caves and seasonal camps, to the settled, complex societies of the Neolithic that constructed permanent towns. One of the most significant shifts in this architectural story is the transition from round huts to rectangular buildings. A round hut is a simple, organic form, but a rectangular structure with straight walls represents a conceptual leap. It allows for efficient division of interior space, creating separate rooms for sleeping, storage, and craftwork. This simple change reflects a profound shift in how people organize their daily lives and their social relationships. As communities grew and became more settled, their architecture began to reflect new concerns. We see the emergence of defensive features for the first time. Settlements were encircled by deep ditches and sturdy palisades, walls made of timber posts protecting stored food and people from rival groups. The very ground tells this story of increasing permanence and complexity. In the Balkans, massive mounds known as tells were formed over centuries as houses made of mud brick were built, collapsed, and rebuilt on the very same spot, each generation literally standing on the foundations of the last. This layering of history created artificial hills that are archives of continuous habitation. How did architectural ideas spread so widely? Cultural exchange along ancient trade routes was a powerful engine of innovation. A technique like corbelling, where stones are layered to form a domed roof, might be perfected in one region and then travel for hundreds of miles, adopted and adapted by different cultures who saw its utility. This evolutionary journey from a single room to a planned village, from a temporary windbreak to a fortified town, showcases a fundamental truth about our species. Our built environments are not just backdrops for our lives, they are active participants in shaping our societies. The walls we build around us also build the world within us. And within those walls, a vibrant daily life unfolded, giving these silent structures their true purpose and meaning. The true genius of prehistoric engineering is found not only in their temples, but in their homes. Imagine the warmth of a central hearth, its light flickering across the faces of a family as they share a meal, the smoke curling up towards a roof that also served as a street. At places like Çatalhöyük in Turkey, one of the world's earliest known cities, we see this intimate, practical side of ancient life. The houses were built so close together they shared walls, and people moved between them by walking across the rooftops, descending into their living spaces through holes with wooden ladders. This was not just efficient land use, it was a deliberate design for security and social cohesion, creating a tight-knit, easily defensible community. Within these homes, engineering directly improved daily comfort and survival. The hearth was the heart of the house, carefully positioned for both cooking and warmth. But these builders also thought about what happened when it rained. They designed simple yet effective drainage channels to carry water away from their walls, preventing the mud brick from dissolving back into the earth. Below the floor, they dug deep storage pits, lining them with plaster to keep their precious grain safe from moisture and pests. This was engineering for stability, ensuring that a hard-won harvest would last through the winter. Their ingenuity extended to the very materials underfoot. They wove reeds and grasses into thick mats and textiles, laying them over the hard, earthen floors. These were not mere decorations. They provided a layer of insulation against the cold ground and made the living space more comfortable, a small but significant upgrade to their quality of life. This same principle of using the environment for comfort is seen in the pit houses of the Jomon period in Japan. There, people dug their dwellings partially into the earth, using the ground's natural mass to buffer against extreme temperatures, keeping the interior cool in summer and retaining warmth in winter. The entire layout of a village was a form of social engineering. The placement of homes around a central open area, the shared ovens, the well-trodden paths between dwellings, all of it encouraged interaction and mutual support. This design fostered a powerful sense of place and belonging. How did these functional innovations enhance their lives? They provided the foundational stability that allowed culture to flourish. A safe, warm, and dry home is a place where stories are told, skills are taught, and bonds are strengthened. This was engineering in the service of daily life, a quiet, constant effort to build a better world right where they lived. And to achieve this, they had to confront and overcome a relentless adversary, the passage of time and the elements themselves. Frigid Arctic winds whip across a vast, white expanse, a landscape that seems utterly inhospitable. Yet here, the silent architects performed one of their most elegant feats, turning the very substance of the cold against itself. With carefully cut blocks of compact snow, they constructed igloos, domed shelters where the interior temperature could sit comfortably above freezing while outside the world plunged into a deep freeze. The snow itself acted as a superb insulator, trapping body heat and creating a sanctuary from the elements. This was engineering distilled to its most essential form, using the only material available in a brilliant, life-saving way. From the snow houses of the Inuit to the sod-covered goatee dwellings of the Sami people, these cultures did not merely survive in harsh climates, they thrived by listening to the land and learning its secrets. They used bone, hide, and stone to create structures that were perfectly adapted to their world. This resilience was a global phenomenon. In the searing heat of the desert, ancient Persian engineers confronted a different adversary, water scarcity. Their solution was the Qanat, a gently sloping underground tunnel that tapped into water trapped in mountain foothills and channeled it for miles without a single drop lost to evaporation. This was not just a tunnel, it was a subterranean river, hand-dug and maintained for generations, enabling civilizations to bloom in the driest of lands. High in the Andes, another challenge demanded a different kind of ingenuity. Steep, erosion-prone mountainsides were transformed into the vast steppe terraces of the Incas. These were not simple gardens, they were complex agricultural machines. The stone retaining walls reduced soil erosion, captured rainwater, and even created microclimates by varying the temperature at different levels, allowing a diverse range of crops to grow at altitudes that would otherwise be barren. How did they manage water and air flow in the humid tropics? Structures were raised on stilts to avoid flooding and pests, while clever ventilation systems used the natural flow of air to cool interior spaces, a form of prehistoric air conditioning. Some communities even took to the water itself, building entire villages on lakes. The Crannogs of Scotland and Ireland were artificial islands constructed from timber, stone, and rubble, forming fortified homes that were both defensible and deeply connected to the resources of the lake. What does this global tapestry of adaptation tell us? It reveals a universal human trait, an incredible flexibility in the face of adversity. They did not try to conquer their environment with brute force, but instead engaged in a sophisticated dialogue with it, asking not how to change the land, but how to live with it intelligently. This ancient wisdom, born from necessity, is a powerful lesson for our own era of climate challenges, reminding us that the most sustainable solutions often come from working with the world, not against it. The proof of their success was not only in the structures that survived, but in the smaller, more personal objects they left behind. A cache of antler picks and stone mauls rests near an ancient quarry, each tool worn smooth by 1,000 forgotten grips. These are not just objects, they are the physical extension of the builder's will, the very instruments that turned raw landscape into sacred geometry. Tool specialists examining these artifacts under magnification can read the story of their use etched into the surface. The specific polish and striations on an antler pick reveal it was used for prying and levering, while the crushed tip of a stone maul tells of relentless pounding against granite. This is how we begin to understand the techniques, by studying the wear on the tools themselves. One of the most transformative inventions was the adze, a stone blade set at a right angle to a wooden handle. This simple composite tool turned a chopping motion into a planing one, allowing builders to shape and smooth timber with a control that was impossible with a hand-held axe. Imagine the precision this brought to framing a roof or carving a monumental totem pole. Then there was the bow drill, a device of elegant simplicity. By wrapping a bowstring around a central shaft and moving the bow back and forth, they could achieve a rapid, consistent rotation. This tool bored holes for wooden pegs that locked joints together, and when tipped with a hard stone or an abrasive sand, it could even drill through solid rock. For ensuring true vertical lines, they used one of the oldest and most reliable tools in history, the plumb bob. A simple weight suspended from a string will always point directly toward the Earth's center. By holding this against a standing stone, a builder could confirm it was perfectly upright, a crucial check for stability and celestial alignment. The development of composite tools, where a finely worked stone head was hafted or attached to a wooden handle with sinew and resin, was a revolutionary leap. It multiplied human force, allowing for more powerful strikes and more efficient carving. And for finishing, they used the simplest of abrasives, rubbing sand, which is essentially tiny fragments of quartz, against a stone surface with a leather pad or a wooden block. They could grind and polish granite to a surprising sheen. We see the evolution of this technology in the belongings of Ötzi the Iceman, a man preserved in the Alps for over 5,000 years. His toolkit included a copper axe, a rare and precious item in that era. The presence of metal, even in this small quantity, signals a shift toward materials that could hold a sharper, more durable edge. So how did this steady drumbeat of tool innovation drive architectural advances? A sharper adze meant straighter timbers for more complex roof frames. A reliable bow drill allowed for the joinery needed to build multi-story structures. Plumb bob ensured that taller walls would not topple. Each small improvement in the toolkit unlocked new possibilities in design, enabling more ambitious temples, more resilient homes, and more precise astronomical alignments. These artifacts are our most direct link to the individuals who conceived these wonders. Holding a stone maul is to feel the ghost of a callus, to touch the hand that moved the mountain. And that hand had to teach another, raising the next question of how this hard-won wisdom was preserved and passed down through the silent generations. An elder's hand guides a younger one, placing it on a specific stone. "Feel this edge," they might have said. "This is the stone that catches the first light of the longest day." This intimate transfer of skill from one generation to the next was the lifeblood of prehistoric engineering. In a world without blueprints or textbooks, knowledge lived in the breath of stories and the rhythm of songs. Anthropologists studying indigenous traditions have found that complex building instructions were often woven directly into myth and ceremony. A song might not just tell a story of ancestral heroes, but also encode the precise number of posts needed for a ceremonial house or the correct angle for setting a foundation stone. The very rhythm of the chant could mirror the cadence of workers driving piles into the earth. Dance and drama were not merely entertainment, they were living libraries. A group might perform a ritual that physically acted out the process of raising a massive beam, with each movement and position teaching the principles of leverage and coordinated effort. This transformed abstract engineering concepts into muscle memory and shared experience. The boat-building masters of the Pacific are a stunning example. They constructed vast, ocean-going vessels capable of crossing thousands of miles without a single written plan. The intricate designs for these canoes, the subtle curves that gave them stability in open seas, were held entirely in memory, passed from master to apprentice through years of hands-on work. Why was this oral and experiential method so remarkably effective? It embedded technical knowledge within the very fabric of cultural identity. To forget the song was to forget how to build the boat that sustained your people. This made the knowledge resilient, protected by its sacred and practical value. It was not separate information to be filed away. It was part of the story of who they were. This deep, mentor-based learning ensured that the silent architects' wisdom did not die with them, but was carried forward in the minds and hands of their successors. Within this intricate web of knowledge transfer, specific roles and responsibilities began to crystallize, often following the lines of family and kin. A stone spindle wall rests in the dust of a 5,000-year-old building site, a small, discarded object that whispers a profound truth. We have long pictured prehistoric engineering as a world of male laborers straining to raise colossal stones, but the full story is far more nuanced and collaborative. The physical division of labor was likely real, with tasks often split along lines of strength and tradition, men hauling massive blocks while women applied the final, weather-proofing plaster to walls. Yet to see this as a simple hierarchy is to misunderstand their world entirely. Feminist archaeologists like Margaret Conkey urge us to look closer at the evidence we often overlook. That spindle wall, used for spinning thread, suggests that the people creating textiles and clothing were right there, present and active at the heart of these communal projects. Their work was not separate from engineering, it was essential to it. The sturdy pottery vessels they coiled and fired were not just for cooking, but for storing the water and grain that fed the entire workforce. The mats and textiles they wove from reeds and grasses could form insulating roofs and comfortable floors, turning a stone structure into a livable home. These were not marginal tasks, they were the supporting arts that made grand construction possible. Could women have been the architects themselves? While it is difficult to prove, the possibility is compelling. In many traditional societies studied by ethnographers, women were the primary designers and builders of family dwellings, possessing an intimate knowledge of spatial needs and structural principles. The famous Venus figurines, like the Venus of Willendorf with her exaggerated forms, have often been interpreted as symbols of fertility. But what if they also represent powerful female ancestors or ritual leaders who sanctioned and guided the construction of sacred spaces? Their presence hints at a social landscape where authority and knowledge were not the exclusive domain of one gender. How does this change our view of the silent architects? It transforms a monolithic image of muscular effort into a vibrant tapestry of collaboration. It suggests that the intelligence behind these monuments was not a singular genius, but a collective wisdom, drawing on the distinct skills and perspectives of an entire community. Recognizing these diverse contributions paints a richer, more human picture of prehistoric societies, where building was a holistic endeavor woven into the very fabric of daily life. This intricate social cooperation, however, required a solid foundation, an economic system capable of supporting hundreds of hands diverted from hunting and gathering. A gleaming shard of obsidian, black as a moonless night, sits hundreds of miles from its volcanic source. This was not a random stone, but a key component in a vast prehistoric economic engine. The silent architects did not work in a vacuum. Their grandest projects were powered by networks of trade and the crucial stability of a food surplus. Without these foundations, the stones would never have left the ground. Archaeologists like Brian Fagan point to the agricultural revolution as the true catalyst. When a community could reliably produce more food than it needed for immediate survival, everything changed. This surplus meant that not every pair of hands had to be in the fields. It freed up individuals to specialize, to become the expert quarry workers, the master lever operators, or the long-distance traders who secured vital resources. How did a society fund the construction of a temple that took generations to complete? The answer may lie in luxury. The movement of rare and beautiful materials provides a clue. Amber from the Baltic coast has been found in Mycenaean tombs. Turquoise from the American Southwest was traded across vast deserts. These were not mere trinkets, they were prestige goods that created social debts and obligations. A chief or elder who controlled the flow of such items could essentially bankroll a project, using them to reward labor, forge alliances, and demonstrate a divine right to rule. This emerging economy was built on more than simple barter. It operated on complex systems of gift-giving and tribute, where the exchange of objects was intertwined with social and political power. A gift of fine pottery or exotic shells created a reciprocal obligation, a debt that could be called in as labor on a communal project. The management of common resources was itself a form of social engineering. A forest that provided the timber for sledges and levers had to be carefully managed to prevent overharvesting. A clay pit that supplied material for bricks was a community asset, its use likely governed by unwritten but strict rules. The most striking evidence for this long-distance economic web comes from Stonehenge. The smaller inner stones, the bluestones, were quarried from the Preseli Hills in Wales, a journey of over 140 miles. This was not a random choice. These stones held a powerful significance, perhaps spiritual or ancestral, that justified the staggering logistical effort of their transport. This endeavor required not just muscle, but a pre-existing network of social connections and trade routes that stretched across the entire length of Britain. It suggests a level of economic and political organization far beyond a few isolated villages. Their resourcefulness in moving both materials and ideas across the landscape reveals that their greatest construction was not made of stone, but of relationships. This intricate web of exchange did more than move rocks. It began to weave together the very fabric of human culture, carrying designs and beliefs across continents. A single idea could travel farther than any one person, crossing mountains and seas through the silent language of trade. A merchant from the Indus Valley, seeing the arched doorways of a Mesopotamian city, might carry that concept home in his mind, where it would be reborn in the local brick. This was the invisible network of prehistoric innovation, a slow-motion conversation where techniques for pottery, metallurgy, and monumental construction were the most valuable commodities. Scholars like Gordon Childer called this process diffusion, the spreading of cultural traits through migration, trade, and sometimes conflict. It was not a simple copy and paste, but a creative adaptation. Look at the journey of megalithic culture, the tradition of building with massive stones. It appears to have rippled out from its early centers in the Mediterranean, moving along coastlines and river valleys into the heart of northern Europe. In each new region, communities adopted the powerful idea of erecting great stones, but they made it their own, resulting in the unique stone circles of Britain, the angled passage graves of Ireland, and the ship-shaped settings of Scandinavia. The same principle applied to agriculture. The package of domesticated crops and animals, first developed in the Near East, moved slowly across Europe, transforming nomadic hunter-gatherers into settled farmers. This shift in how people fed themselves directly enabled the next leap in engineering, as stable, food-producing societies could now dedicate energy to grand, permanent projects. How did this cultural blending actually enhance engineering? It introduced a toolkit of solutions. A community struggling to roof a large space might learn of the corbelled arch from distant traders, a technique where stones are layered inward until they meet at the top. This single idea could unlock new architectural forms, from larger communal houses to more impressive tombs. We see this creative synthesis most vividly in the step pyramids of Mesoamerica. While the basic concept of a layered, towering structure echoes the ziggurats of Mesopotamia and the mastabas of early Egypt, the Maya and Aztecs developed it into something entirely their own, adorning it with steep stairways and temples dedicated to their own gods, all adapted to their specific materials and spiritual beliefs. This was not a world of isolated genius, but a dynamic, interconnected landscape where a new idea in one region could, over centuries, spark an innovation halfway across the globe. The silent architects were connected by a web of exchange, and this forces us to ask a deeper question. If they were so connected, what was the powerful, common purpose that drove so many of them to pour their lives into these colossal stone undertakings? A towering pyramid does more than reach for the sun. It broadcasts a message of absolute power across the sands. These colossal projects were often the ultimate tools of social control, a physical manifestation of a leader's authority and a community's collective identity. When a chief or pharaoh commissioned a grand tomb, they were doing far more than preparing for the afterlife. They were cementing their rule in the world of the living. The sheer scale of a monument like the Great Pyramid of Giza, visible for miles in every direction, was a constant, overwhelming reminder of the ruler who commanded its construction. It impressed not only the local population but also any potential outsider, signaling the wealth, organization, and divine favor of the kingdom. This visibility was a strategic form of propaganda carved in stone. Archaeologists like Michael Parker Pearson have theorized that these structures were deeply tied to the worship of ancestors, effectively merging the power of the ruling elite with the spiritual authority of the past. By building a tomb for a leader that also served as an ancestral shrine, they blurred the line between a political figure and a divine intermediary. The Maltese temples, with their massive, curving walls and intricate altars, may have functioned as central places where a scattered population gathered for rituals, reinforcing a shared identity under the guidance of a priestly class. This display of power was often material. The use of rare, imported stones was a deliberate demonstration of wealth and far-reaching connections. The blue stones of Stonehenge, hauled from distant Wales, were not just building materials, they were statements. Their very presence on the Salisbury Plain proclaimed that the rulers could mobilize resources and labor on an unimaginable scale. On Rapa Nui, the iconic Moai statues are widely believed to represent deified clan ancestors. Erecting a larger, more imposing Moai was a way for a clan to assert its status and claim to resources. A silent competition played out in volcanic rock. Why would an entire society pour generations of labor into such endeavors? The answer lies in the foundations of social order. A monumental project gave people a shared purpose, a collective goal that transcended individual needs. It solidified a hierarchy, providing a visible structure for society itself. More than that, it created an anchor for collective memory, a permanent place where stories, lineage, and identity were literally set in stone. This drive to build on a grand scale speaks to a deep-seated human need for legacy and meaning, a desire to create something that will echo through time. This purposeful shaping of the world extended far beyond single structures, into the very soul of the landscape itself. A single standing stone is a profound statement, but an entire valley sculpted into a living temple is a declaration of an entire worldview. The silent architects did not merely place monuments upon the land, they engaged in a form of prehistoric terraforming, shaping the very skin of the earth for both practical needs and profound spiritual expression. Landscape archaeology reveals that their greatest works were often not isolated buildings, but integrated systems of terraces, canals, and mounds that transformed the natural world into a sacred canvas. The famous Nazca lines in Peru are the ultimate example, where the artists did not build up but scraped away, removing the dark surface pebbles to reveal the light-colored earth beneath. These colossal images of spiders, monkeys, and birds are only comprehensible from a vantage point high above, suggesting they were meant for the gods themselves, a prayer etched into the desert floor that integrated perfectly with the flat, stony plain. In Britain, the great hill figures like the Uffington White Horse were created by cutting deep trenches into the chalk hillsides, forming massive, enduring symbols that gleamed against the green landscape. These were not random decorations, they were central to the community's identity, visible for miles and likely maintained for generations. How did they achieve such large-scale modifications? They mastered land leveling, using simple tools to carve vast, flat plazas out of hillsides. They engineered sophisticated water diversion systems, channeling springs and rainfall through carefully graded canals to nourish their terraced fields and fill their ritual basins. They also built upwards, creating colossal artificial hills. Silbury Hill in England is a stunning feat of this kind, the largest prehistoric mound in Europe. Composed of over 500,000 tons of chalk and clay, it was built in stages, layer upon layer, like a giant earthen wedding cake. Its purpose remains mysterious, but its presence dominates the surrounding sacred landscape, a man-made mountain that likely served as a powerful focal point for ceremonies. This holistic approach extended to alignments with natural features. A temple might be positioned to frame a distant, distinctive mountain peak, or a ceremonial pathway might lead directly to a sacred river. The land itself was alive, a partner in their cosmic drama, and their engineering was a dialogue with its spirit. This challenges our modern separation of culture and environment, revealing a time when humans saw themselves as co-creators within a living world, not as masters over an inert resource. Such a monumental reshaping of the Earth, however, was not without its own set of physical dangers and costs, raising questions about the human toll of these ambitions. A skeleton from a prehistoric site shows a broken arm healed cleanly and set straight. This single bone tells a powerful story of risk and care. The work of moving multi-ton stones was inherently dangerous, a world of crushing loads, sharp flint edges, and precarious heights. Yet the evidence written in human remains reveals that these communities did not discard their injured. They possessed a practical understanding of safety and a robust system of communal support that ensured the wounded were nursed back to health. How did they protect themselves amid such perilous work? For working at height, they likely constructed simple but effective scaffolding from lashed-together wooden poles, allowing them to reach and secure upper courses of stone. To move heavy blocks upward, earthen ramps were not just for efficiency. They reduced the chance of a catastrophic slip by providing a stable, graduated incline. Think of the difference between trying to lift a heavy box over your head versus walking it up a gentle slope. The ramp was their slope, a fundamental safety feature that turned an impossible lift into a manageable pull. Their protections extended beyond the physical. The discovery of amulets, carved stones, or animal teeth buried at the foundations of a monument suggests they also sought spiritual safeguards. These were likely protective charms meant to ward off malevolent spirits or simply to bring good fortune to a dangerous endeavor. A ritual performed before raising a great stone might have offered psychological comfort, steadying nerves and uniting the team in a shared, sacred purpose. Why would an individual take such risks? The reward was woven into the fabric of their society. Participation in a grand project guaranteed your place in the community. It brought prestige, shared feasts, and the profound satisfaction of contributing to something eternal. A healed fracture is more than evidence of an accident. It is proof of a social contract, an unspoken promise that the group would care for its own. This focus on well-being, both physical and spiritual, transforms our image of the silent architect from a faceless laborer into a valued member of a caring society. Their ability to undertake such risky projects was rooted in a foundation far more stable than stone, a deep-seated culture of mutual aid, and this collective effort required a vision that extended far beyond the present moment, a detailed plan held in the mind long before the first stone was ever quarried. The blueprint was not a parchment, but a patch of damp earth. There, a circle of elders could have debated while a lead architect sketched the temple's outline with a sharpened stick, adjusting the lines based on a lifetime of watching the stars. These silent architects possessed a sophisticated planning toolkit, even without written plans. They used simple, brilliant tools like knotted cords and wooden pegs to lay out perfect circles and precise right angles on the ground. By stretching a cord between two fixed pegs and walking the radius, they could inscribe a massive, flawless circle, the foundation for everything from Stonehenge to the great stone rings of Senegambia. Their geometric understanding was profound, born from practical necessity. Remarkably, some of their monuments incorporate what we now call Pythagorean triples, whole number ratios that create perfect right triangles. A builder could create a perfect right angle for a square chamber by using a cord with knots spaced at 3, 4, and 5 equal intervals. By fixing the 3 and 4 unit lengths together and stretching the 5 unit span, they formed a precise triangle. This was not abstract math, but applied, hands-on knowledge. We see this same practical geometry echoed thousands of years later in the precise proportions of Egyptian pyramids and Greek temples, a testament to a universal architectural language discovered and rediscovered across time. For the most complex projects, they likely built models. At sites like the Neolithic Temple of Mnajdra in Malta, archaeologists have found miniature stone arrangements that mirror the layout of the full-scale structures nearby. These were the three-dimensional prototypes, allowing the master builder to visualize spatial relationships and demonstrate the final form to the entire work crew. The inspiration for these designs often reached beyond the physical world. For many cultures, the plans for a sacred structure were believed to come from visions or dreams, a divine gift from ancestral spirits or animal guides. The intricate geometric patterns and spirals carved into the rocks of Valcamonica in Italy may be more than art. They could be spiritual maps or architectural concepts received in altered states of consciousness. This capacity for long-term, abstract thought completely shatters any lingering notion of the primitive caveman. To conceive a project that would take generations to complete, to hold its complex geometry in your mind, and to translate it into a monument of stone requires a cognitive leap we associate with modern engineering. Their foresight was their greatest tool, proving that the silent architects were not just strong of back, but truly giants of the mind. This intellectual legacy did not fade away, it was carefully passed down, its principles echoing through the grand civilizations that would follow. The principles of the silent architects did not vanish with the passing of the Stone Age. A Roman engineer surveying the dry stone walls of an earlier civilization would have recognized a familiar and brilliant logic. The foundations laid in prehistory directly supported the architectural triumphs of classical antiquity. The seamless walls of Mycenae, the towering ziggurats of Mesopotamia, and even the grand aqueducts of Rome all owe a debt to these first engineers. This was not a clean break, but a continuous evolution of knowledge passed down and refined over millennia. Scholars trace a clear line in the use of materials, such as the precise cutting of ashlar masonry blocks, a technique perfected by the Inca and later adopted by the Greeks. The very concept of a temple's sacred orientation, so crucial to the builders of Newgrange, became a cornerstone of Greek and Egyptian sacred architecture, where entire complexes were aligned with celestial bodies. One of the most significant evolutions was that of the corbel arch. This prehistoric invention, where stones are layered inward until they meet, was the precursor to the true arch with its central keystone. We can see this progression in the ancient Near East, where corbelled underground chambers gradually gave way to the arched gateways of Mesopotamian cities. This was a conceptual leap that would eventually allow for the vast, open spaces of Roman basilicas and cathedrals. The transmission of practical skills was just as vital. The sophisticated mining and quarrying techniques developed to extract flint and megalithic blocks provided the essential groundwork for the Metal Ages. The knowledge of how to locate ore, dig deep pits, and control fires hot enough to smelt rock was born in those prehistoric workshops. This hard-won expertise directly enabled the Bronze and Iron Ages, fueling a new era of tools and construction. The magnificent beehive tombs of Mycenae, with their soaring corbelled domes, are a perfect example of this living legacy. They are not purely Mycenaean inventions, but the spectacular refinement of a building tradition with deep prehistoric roots. Why does this unbroken chain of innovation matter to us today? It connects our modern world of steel and silicon directly to that first spark of human ingenuity. The drive to solve a problem, to build something that lasts, is a thread that runs unbroken from the first stone lever to the modern crane. This continuity enriches our understanding of progress, showing it not as a series of isolated revolutions, but as a slow, cumulative conversation across the centuries. To hear the rest of that conversation, we now turn to the sophisticated tools of modern archaeology. A drone's laser pulse strikes the jungle floor, and beneath the dense green canopy, the ghost of a city appears. This is LiDAR at work, a technology that is fundamentally rewriting the story of the silent architects. By stripping away the vegetation digitally, it reveals the true scope of their ambition, exposing vast networks of earthworks and roadways in places like the Amazon, where the scale of prehistoric development was once unimaginable. This is just one tool in a new scientific arsenal. Ground-penetrating radar sends waves into the earth, mapping buried foundations and post holes without ever breaking the soil, showing us the outlines of entire villages that have been invisible for millennia. Isotopic analysis of bones and teeth tells a different story, revealing the diet and even the birthplace of an individual. We now know that some people buried at Stonehenge traveled from as far away as the Alps, proving these sites drew pilgrims from across the continent. How has this flood of data changed our interpretations? It replaces speculation with precision. We are no longer guessing how a stone was moved. We can run physics simulations to model the exact number of people and the precise angle of ropes needed to transport a multi-ton block. We can create three-dimensional digital models of a monument and then use virtual reality to walk through it as it stood thousands of years ago, experiencing the play of light at the solstice sunrise from inside the chamber. Even the Great Pyramid of Giza has been scoured with cosmic ray detectors, an effort to peer through its stone heart and confirm the existence of hidden, undiscovered chambers. This scientific lens reveals the silent architects not as mythical figures, but as practical, complex problem solvers. We see the trial and error in the construction sequence of a tomb, the repairs made to a wall, the adaptations to a changing climate. This technology brings us closer to their reality than ever before, letting us see the world through their eyes, if only for a moment. Yet this powerful ability to uncover and reconstruct also raises profound ethical questions about our right to disturb these sacred spaces. A descendant stands beside an archaeologist, their shared gaze fixed on a fragment of pottery emerging from the earth. This collaborative moment represents a profound shift in how we uncover the past, moving from a one-sided excavation to a shared dialogue. The study of prehistoric engineering now grapples with essential ethical questions, forcing us to confront a difficult history where the remains of ancient builders were often treated as mere specimens, separated from the living cultures that still cherish them. This has led to a vital global movement for the repatriation of artifacts, returning sacred objects and ancestral remains to their communities of origin, acknowledging that some knowledge is not meant for public display. Organizations like the World Archaeological Congress have established clear guidelines that prioritize collaboration with indigenous and local communities, ensuring their voices are not just heard but are central to the process. This means that a research project on an ancestral mound begins not in a lab but with a conversation with tribal elders seeking permission and guidance. Why is this partnership so crucial? It prevents cultural appropriation where symbols, designs, and spiritual practices are taken out of context and used without understanding or respect. It also forces us to acknowledge that oral histories and traditional knowledge are not myths, but valid records of the past, preserving details about construction techniques and sacred purposes that no soil analysis can ever reveal. The challenges extend beyond the dig site. The very popularity of these places, like Stonehenge or Machu Picchu, creates a tension between access and preservation. Millions of footsteps can erode ancient stone pathways, while the infrastructure needed for tourism can damage the spiritual atmosphere of a site. The restoration of Borobudur in Indonesia, a massive 9th century Buddhist temple, sparked intense debate. The process replaced original stones with new ones, raising questions about whether we are preserving a monument or creating a modern replica for the sake of visitor numbers. Sustainable management seeks a balance, often involving local communities as guardians who benefit directly from preserving their heritage. This ethical reflection is not a limitation on science, but its necessary evolution. It honors the legacy of the silent architects by respecting the living cultures that carry their memory. It ensures our pursuit of knowledge does not become a new form of colonial conquest, but a respectful partnership. This approach leaves us not with all the answers, but with a deeper, more humble set of questions about the mysteries that still lie just beyond our reach. That perfect, seamless fit of stones at Sacsayhuamon remains a silent challenge to our modern assumptions. We have mapped their quarries and modeled their transport, yet the deepest mysteries of the silent architects are not in the how, but in the why, and in the subtle details that defy simple explanation. Consider the long, parallel rows of stones at Carnac in France. Were they a vast astronomical calendar, a sacred processional path, or perhaps the physical representation of a deity? The truth is, we may never know for certain, and that ambiguity is precisely what fuels our endless fascination. The same uncertainty surrounds the iconic moai of Rapa Nui. We understand the basic principles of how they might have been walked upright with ropes, but the sheer scale of the operation, the social cohesion required to move nearly 900 statues, and the ultimate reason for their toppling are puzzles that continue to generate new and competing theories. Beyond vision, these sites engage our other senses in ways we are only beginning to comprehend. Inside the great mound of Newgrange, the chamber possesses a remarkable acoustic property. A single voice or a beat of a drum can create a powerful, reverberating echo, transforming the space into a resonant chamber. Was this an intentional design meant to amplify chants and disorient the mind during rituals? Or is it merely a fortunate accident of its stone architecture? We are left to listen and wonder. These persistent gaps in our knowledge lead to larger, more provocative questions. Were there lost technologies or sophisticated knowledge systems that simply left no trace? The debate over who built the pyramids of Giza is a classic example. The old narrative of countless slaves driven by the whip has been largely replaced by evidence of a skilled, well-fed workforce, artisans who lived in dedicated villages and took pride in their monumental task. This shift forces us to reconsider the entire social and economic structure of ancient Egypt. What keeps these ancient questions so powerfully alive in our modern world? They are more than academic exercises. They fundamentally challenge our perception of human potential. They remind us that intelligence is not defined by the presence of microchips, but by the creative application of observation and collaboration. Every time a new technology like LiDAR reveals a lost city in the jungle, or a physicist calculates a new method for moving a megalith, we are not just filling in a blank in a history book. We are engaging in a conversation across time, humbled by the ingenuity of our ancestors and inspired to look at our own world with a renewed sense of possibility. The silent architects left behind not just puzzles to be solved, but a legacy of wonder that continues to call to the explorer in